News of 3.5% GDP growth among the latest signs that the economy is recovering. Our next guest is not so optimistic. In an online post today, Euro-Pacific Capital President and Chief Global Strategist Peter Schiff wrote, quote, "In the end, this stimulus, just like prior doses, will only worsen the condition it is meant to cure. When it wears off, the resulting recession will be even bigger than the one that everyone assumes has just ended," end quote. Let's get more detail from the man himself, also a candidate for the Senate in 2010, Peter Schiff. Peter, welcome back to Happy Hour. The White House tells us the economy is recovering. We heard it all day today. Do you agree or disagree, Pete?
No, I mean, it's getting sicker. You know, the GDP growth merely confirms that the economy is getting sicker because the growth is the result of spending more borrowed money. If you look at the two biggest components, it was consumers buying cars with their cash for clunkers money, and we also constructed more residential housing. But why are we doing that? Why are we wasting resources building houses when we have a glut of houses that nobody is buying? It's all because of government subsidies and stimulus, which is causing us to invest resources in an inefficient manner, and it's further encumbering our economy. We're in worse shape now because of that GDP growth.
So, Peter, I mean, I understand your logic on that, but the question then the question then becomes, when does the market start discounting the next downturn? If we pump another $2-3 trillion through the economy and, I don't know, secretive de facto stimuli and whatnot that they're doing, can't we see another 2-3 years of, I don't know, questionable GDP growth?
Well, I don't know if we're going to get growth for that long. I mean, we could buy a little bit more time. But remember, all this is phony growth. The economy is not really growing. And the only way to sustain it is to keep the stimulus. You know, everybody is talking about what's the Fed exit strategy. They can't exit. The minute you remove the stimulus, the economy is going to collapse. But the reality is it has to collapse because it's phony. You can't keep propping it up indefinitely because then you risk completely destroying the value of the U.S. dollar. And that's going to be a crisis that's going to be much worse than anything we're talking about now.
Peter, the market's all over the place. We had a 200-point gain yesterday. We had a 200-plus loss today. All these predictions that it's going to get worse. For my Main Street viewers, what do we do with our 401k? Give me some solid advice. Do I get out and put it in a bond fund, a money market fund? What?
Well, definitely don't buy bonds. You know, I think there's certainly a lot of volatility. The most interesting thing, I think, about today was the rally in gold off the lows. You know, gold was down about $10, and it only closed down about $1.50, even though the stock market closed near the lows. And it looks like maybe gold is, again, decoupling from these other assets, and it shows it's very strong. So I still think gold looks good. People can buy gold coins or invest in some of these ETFs. But ultimately, I think foreign markets are going to shrug off the problems here in the United States and ultimately benefit once foreign governments stop subsidizing our consumption. So I still think it makes sense to be invested internationally, to own foreign stocks, particularly in Asia, to have exposure to natural resources. But I don't think it makes sense to be invested in any assets in the United States right now.
Peter, my friend, my good friend, you and I have traded together for 23 years, 25 years, whatever. But here's a question. You tell me there's going to be a double-dip recession, even worse, second dip is going to be worse than this one. And God help us, if you're in a emerging markets fund, you'll get buried. You'll get buried worse than you were if you were in a U.S. fund.
Why?
How could you tell people, it's going to be okay over there but bad here?
Yeah, you remember, the main drag on the global economy is having to finance our economy. Because our economy only functions right now because the world props it up. And when they realize the error of their ways, when they stop sending us all their goods and loaning us all their money, the world is going to have the equivalent of a boom. They're going to all of a sudden have all these extra resources and extra goods that they didn't have, extra capital to invest in their own economies, and I think you're going to have, you know, a global boom. And I'm prepared for that. Right now, you know, the markets are kind of trading in tandem, but they will decouple, and foreign markets will be able to do well, not just despite the fact that our economy is imploding, but because of it.
You know, Peter, you're running as a Republican, surprisingly enough. How's the reception been by all those fascist, socialist, and stimulus-loving Republicans that you have to deal with in that party?
Well, you know, I'm just getting started on the campaign. We'll have to see how my message is resonating. But, you know, I wasn't just opposed to the second Bush stimulus in his second term, that $180 billion one, but I was opposed to the first Bush stimulus in his first term back in 2001, 2002, when we sowed the seeds for this disaster. Remember, it all got started when Greenspan lowered interest rates to 1% and Bush started the deficit spending, all to try to stimulate us out of the last recession, and they did, and they stimulated us right into this depression.
Peter, so we've been talking a lot to the real Republicans, they call themselves. You know, you have Doug Hoffman and Chris Daggett over there in New Jersey. Are you considered one of these real Republicans? Because you're not all over the place, but you're not like you're pro-abortion, for example, and you support, you think gay marriage should be fine. That's not a real Republican stance, as you know, aside from your economic issues.
Well, sure it is. I mean, it's a stance where Republicans respect the individual's sovereignty over the state, the individual's right to run his life the way he chooses. And I believe that the government should stay out of the economy and should stay out of our bedrooms as well. And it's a very Republican principle. There's certainly a faction of the Republican Party that doesn't feel that way. But I think if you go back to the real traditions of what being a Republican means, limited government and the individual, my positions are very much Republican.
Can I beg to differ with you? I think that would be more conservative than Republican limited government. You sound like a true libertarian, yet you want to run on the Republican
well, look, I mean, I sound like Ronald
bandwagon to maybe raise money or for whatever reason.
Well, Ronald Reagan would have a hard time running as a Republican in today's Republican Party. Even though everybody likes to embrace Reagan when they run, they're all running away from his principles. Same thing with Barry Goldwater. There's not much difference between what I'm saying and what Barry Goldwater said. So maybe it's the Republican Party that has changed. I'm trying to stay in the same.
Thanks so much for joining us.